Hi students, I welcome you all to our new series on the second chapter, that is Gauss theorem of our unit electrostatic, which we are dealing with. So let's start with a new chapter, that is your Gauss theorem, and the unit which we are discussing, that is your electrostatic. Previously we have already discussed about the Coulomb's law, and we have the idea of electric field lines, electric force, and force exerted by electric field on another charge. So this chapter will give you an alternative way of calculating electric fields actually. So before we can begin the exact topic of our Gauss theorem, we have to understand some points or some concepts before we can deal with the Gauss theorems. And those concepts or those points are like you should have an idea of area vector, plane angle, solid angle, electric flux, and these are the points which you should require for better understanding of for the better defining our Gauss theorem. So let's start our topic with the area vector. It's a new concept. The area vector. As you all know that there are two kinds of physical quantities. One is scalar quantities and other are vector quantities. And for a quick revision, I remind you that physical objects and physical quantities are different things. For example, this whiteboard is a physical object. This whiteboard is not a physical quantity. It's a physical object. What are the physical quantities? Physical quantities characterizes or define the physical objects. For example, the length, the width of this board, the density of this board, the mass of this board, the weight of this, all these are what? They are the physical quantities, and they are defining this, characterizing this whiteboard, how long it is, how wide it is, and all this thing. So there are two kinds of physical quantities. One is scalar, means if I measure the length of this board from here to here, say 2 meter, from there to here is 2 meter. Both ways I am getting the length as 2 meters. So there is no effect of the direction on the measurement of length. So there are those quantities which does not alter by changing the direction of measurement, or direction is not important in their measurement, are called scalar, and the one which requires direction, they are called the vector quantities. Since area, previously you have studied that area is the surface bounded by a closed loop. So this area, length and width, you get the area as length multiplied by breadth, and you get this shaded portion. And we have a notion that area is a scalar. But here we are dealing with the area vector. Area vector is a quite useful concept. What does it say? For example, if you have an area, let this be a circle. This circle has an area A. How we can represent this area as an area vector? You all know our vector quantities are represented by lines and arrows. The length of the arrow represents the magnitude. The point or the arrowhead determines the direction. So area vector, which is written as A vector, like this. Area vectors are like this area can be represented by this line. The length of this line will be equal to this area, and the direction will be perpendicular to the area. The direction will be perpendicular to the area. For example, if I take this sheet of paper, this is the area. Okay. So what the area vector, why we require area vector is how this area is situated in the space, whether it is towards you, whether it is towards to your right, towards your left, up or down. So how it is being oriented in this space. The better way is to attach a vector, a line vector. The length of this line will be equal to this area, and the direction is perpendicular to this area. So when the, for example, let us assign coordinates. So if the length, this area vector is toward x-axis, so area is in this. If this area vector is in toward y-axis, so area is situated like this in this space. If it is toward z-axis, so area is situated in this manner in the space. That is why the area vector is helpful, because it tells you how the area, a particular surface, is oriented in a space, in which direction it is orienting. That is why the area vector is very useful. That is why the concept of area vector is being introduced. And how to express an area into a vector? A vector which has the length equal to the surface area, and the direction of this area vector is perpendicular to the surface of which the area vector you are representing. So this is an area vector. How you can represent one more thing? We can represent it like magnitude. All the vectors, previously I have discussed also, all the vectors has a magnitude and a vector part. Okay, so this whole vector can be represented like this. A is the magnitude of the area, and n cap is the unit vector normal to the surface or perpendicular to the given area. This is the concept of area vector. Any area can be represented with the help of a bar, represented like this, and it is called your area vector. Okay. Next concept is your area vector is already been discussed. Next concept is your solid angle. Next concept first concept we have discussed area vector. Second concept we will discuss is the solid angle. What the solid angle is? Before we can jump onto the solid angle, we should discuss what the plane angle. There are two kinds of angle: plane angle and a solid angle. Let us draw a circle. Let us draw a circle like this, somewhat like this, with the center at O. We have the idea, if we take a part of this circle from here to here, this is called the arc of the circle. This is called the what? Arc of the circle. And the point joining the boundary to the center is called the radius. This is R, this is R, this is S, say arc of the circle. So what we call this point? This is the angle. This is the angle. This is a plane angle. That means when the arc of the circle, if we connect the end of the arc to the center, then the angle which it subtends is called the plane angle. And you know that if you increase this radius, so it will be a bigger arc, say S1, S2. Got it? This is a bigger arc. This is a bigger arc. If we increase the radius, we'll get a bigger arc. Okay. On your screen, you have a diagram. Okay. Previously, you know that angle is equals to, from the mathematics, arc upon radius. We have angle is equals to arc upon radius. This is all the story of your plane angle. This is what? This is not solid angle. This is a plane angle. Why I am teaching this plane angle? Because I am going to transpose this concept of plane angle, to a concept of solid angle. What we have taken? We have taken a circle with a center O, with a radius R, and with an arc of length S. And we defined the angle is equals to arc upon radius. That is how we have defined the angle. So, one more thing. Arc is proportional to radius. Greater the radius, greater will be the arc. That we can conclude from here. How we define this angle? How we will define this angle? If the arc and the radius lengthwise are same, if arc is equals to radius, then these two will cancel out. So then we call one radian, 1 radian. This angle will be called 1 radian if the length of the arc, this S, will be equal to the length of this radius. That means the RS is equals to R. If you choose the arc of length equal to R, then whatever angle it will subtend at the center will be called as 1 radian. This is all about your older knowledge, that is about your plane angle. Instead of taking, on your screen we have a diagram again. The diagram which I have shown you, it is not of the circle, it is of a sphere, that is figure 2 on your screen. If you see on the screen, the circle kind of thing which is taken in the diagram is not a circle, it's a sphere, more like a football. Okay, it's more like a football. So what we are going to do here in this concept, we'll take as instead of this circle, consider this is not a circle but a ball, a sphere. It's a sphere, and when there is a sphere, there is a spherical surface. If you take a ball, you have a spherical surface. From that surface, you consider one surface. Let the area of the surface be dA, and if you join all these boundary of this area to the center O, then you will get something which is called d omega, and this is called your solid angle. This is called your solid angle. Now we are dealing with a solid angle. When we take a circle and arc, we will deal with a plane angle. When we take a sphere and a spherical surface, we deal with a solid angle. So if we choose this is no longer a circle, this is a ball, this is a surface, sphere, and we have chosen a spherical surface of that sphere, and we have connected those lines to the center O. We are getting a solid angle d omega. Got it? Now we can see that if we increase the radius now, if we increase this radius like this, we'll get a bigger area. Okay? So the area dA is proportional to R square. Got it? It's proportional to R square. If we take a ratio of, that is dA upon R square, this ratio is called d omega. Just like the arc upon radius in the previous term, we have in the circle we have taken arc upon radius was the plane angle. Here the spherical area upon R square is called the solid angle d omega. What we will take the unit, how we will define this omega? If the area, if you select this area such that dA is equals to R square, you choose this area such that the magnitude of this area is equals to the radius square, then what we will get? If we will get dA upon R square, it's called 1 steradian. Okay, what we are, again I am defining, take a sphere, choose the part of the sphere and connect the boundary of that area of those spherical surface to the center, you will get a solid angle d omega. How we define the solid angle? That is the area upon R square. How much 1 steradian is? If the area of the spherical surface is equals to the square of the radius of that very particular sphere, then the angle which it will subtend at the center is called the 1 steradian. Is called the 1 steradian. Got it? If we consider the whole sphere, then the total surface area will come into place, and the total surface area of the sphere, that is the total A, is equals to 4 pi R square, total area. Then the total surface area of the sphere will subtend the total solid angle. How much it will be? Then it will be what? Omega, d omega for the small angle and omega for the total angle. What you will get? 4 pi R square upon R square will be cancelled, 4 pi. So omega is equals to 4 pi steradian. That means a totally closed surface at its center subtended total angle of 4 pi steradian at the center. This is the concept of your solid angle. I hope you have understood. Okay, any kind of, not spherical, any closed surface will subtend a total solid angle of 4 pi steradian. Okay, let's move on further to our concept of dA cos theta. Okay, let me explain one more part. This dA which we have taken was already the part of the sphere in the consideration. This dA was already the part of the sphere in the consideration. If you get a case, for example, here is a area of magnitude dA. This will be your dA vector. Okay, this is an area with its area vector dA in this space. Okay, this is, and there is a point O, let's say here, origin. From here you locate this line, let this be R, let the position vector of this thing be R. Okay, now draw a sphere, considering this R as a radius. Obviously this area is not on the sphere, it is in the space, it is not on the sphere. Okay. Let me remove these lines so it will be more clear. This area, dA area, is not on the surface of the sphere, it is away, it is something deviated. And this R, it has a extrude this thing. Okay, this is what, this is your position vector R with respect to O. Okay, let the angle between them be theta. To make this area fall on the surface, you have to rotate this area. You have this kind of disc, no? When you tilt this area in this manner, so the dA vector goes along the R vector, so our area will fall on this part. Means you have to rotate this thing. How you can rotate? By taking a dot product. Got it? By taking a dot product. Okay, the vector which we have taken over here, the angle is theta, the vector over here is r cap, not the total vector. From here to here the length is r. You want the vector in this direction, you will take a unit vector r, so you can take the dot product. So the length of the vector r cap is 1 and it is in the direction of r. That point is I think that don't take this. Why I am taking the vector? I am taking a generalized case when you will get a position vector. Okay, that will help you a lot. But in the book they take only r, so you also leave it till the r. But it will be helpful if you deal with the r vector. So when you tilt this area, what amount of area you will get on the sphere? Should I rub this? I should rub this part. Suppose you have taken the dA in this direction. Now when you tilt this area over here like this, so you will get an area in this manner. Previously it was like this, now it is on the surface. So how much area is coming? How much area is coming on the surface? Not dA. dA's component in r cap, and dA's component is r cap is how much? dA cos theta. How you will get? dA vector dot r cap. That is you are tilting this area dA along the direction of r, so you will take d dot r cap, and that will give you dA cos theta, and it will subtend an angle over here, let it be d omega, and this d omega will be dA cos theta upon r square. We will require this formula further when we will explain the Gauss theorem. So we have discussed area vector, we have discussed solid angle in both the manners, in the component wise also and in this manner also. So the third topic is electric flux. Our third topic is electric flux. Okay, we still have not reached the discussion of Gauss theorem. We are still on the way, we are reaching till the Gauss theorem. Before that we are discussing some points. Without these you cannot discuss about the Gauss theorem. So electric flux on your screen is, the electric flux is a measure of the number of lines of force passing through some surface held in an electric field. Very first thing you should notice that electric flux is a property of electric field. Okay. What is electric flux? Electric field, you know that if we have a charge plus charge, it will create a space around it which will consist of electric lines of forces. Okay, previously in Coulomb's law you have discussed. So electric lines of forces could be radially outward, could be parallel. So these lines of forces, we use them to represent the electric field. Okay, these lines are not the electric field, these are the way of representing the electric field. So electric flux is the property of this field. And what is that property? It is the measure of the property. These are the lines of forces, for example. These are the lines of forces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These are the lines of forces. Then what is electric flux? If you held an area like this, place an area in the electric field, then how many lines of forces is passing through the area? 1, 2. Okay, this is not passing, this is not 1 and 2. So how many lines of forces? 2 lines are passing through this entire area. So what is the flux? 2. So electric flux is the measure of the number of lines of forces, electric lines of forces passing through a particular area or surface which is being held inside an electric field. That is our electric flux. Okay, so let us define this thing. As in the figure 4 in your book on your screen, you can see the diagram. It is better drawn in your on your screen in the book. Okay, on the page number 46, you can see the diagram. We are taking one general idea. Okay, we have taken one arbitrary surface, and there are these are what? These are the lines of forces. Okay, we are taking general. These lines of forces are not equally separated, so it is a non-uniform electric field, and this is a total surface which is also not properly flat. It is our general case. So what you will do, from this surface you choose a small area. Let this area be dA, and since area is also a vector, it is a dA vector, and at this point the lines of forces are going in this direction. So this is your electric field E, and between them is the angle theta. Since this area, small area which you have taken from the big area, is so small, in this particular zone the electric lines of forces are already almost uniform, equispaced, uniform, and this area, since it is small, it's almost flat. Okay, so how many lines of forces is passing through this area? For that you will take the electric field is not perpendicular to this surface, so you will take the component of electric field perpendicular to this area. For that you want E dot dA. You will take the dot product of electric field E is also vector, and dA vector. What you will get? The number of lines of forces which is passing through this particular area. So you will take E dot dA. E dot dA is what? It is the total number of lines of forces passing through this small area. That is called electric flux of this small area. But we want this total surface. So what you will do? You will integrate this thing like this thing. Integrate. When you will integrate, what E dot dA is? Simply this dot product is doing, it is making the lines of forces perpendicular to the component. If this is the area, this is the electric field. Let me show with another marker. If this is the area vector and this is the electric lines of forces, then E dot dA will be what? E cos theta dA. E cos theta dA. It will be what? It could be what? E cos theta dA. I should write it in the second line. It will be your A cos theta dA. E cos theta will be what? E cos theta will be the component of electric lines in the direction of dA vector. Okay, so this is called your phi it is represented as phi E. This is the symbol for electric flux. That is the how many lines of force is passing through this area which is held in the electric field. This A represents this area integral, surface integral. Okay, this is the surface integral. When the lines of forces, this phi E, when this lines of forces is coming outward, leaving the surface, then phi E is positive. If the lines of forces is entering the surface, then the phi E is negative. You can read it from the book also. Okay, if this surface, instead of plane surface, if it is a closed surface, then this area symbol changes by this symbol. Okay, changes by this symbol A. If you are talking about the closed surface, for closed surface, you use this symbol on the integration sign. It shows you the closed surface. Now we'll deal with a particular specific case for uniform electric field. For uniform electric field. Okay. When the uniform electric field will be there, then if electric field is uniform, then E is constant throughout the integral. It will come out of this sign. So phi E will be your E cos theta dA. Cos theta dA. E will come out of this, since electric field is uniform. So we'll take it out. E cos theta, only dA will be remaining out, N. And if you integrate this thing, you will get the total area. So finally you will get where I should write. Finally you will get phi E is equals to E A cos theta. This is the total electric flux passing through the area. Greater the field, stronger the field means closer the lines of forces, greater lines will pass through the area. Greater the area, greater will be the flux. And if theta is 0, that means the total field are in the direction, let me explain this part also. Okay. If this is the area, all 4 lines are passing through the area. If this is the area, then if area is like this manner, then no lines of forces passing through the area. So when the theta is 0, that is electric line is in the direction of area, maximum lines will pass. If theta is 90, that is if we hold the surface like this, so area vector will be downward. Theta will be 90. No lines will be passed on. This is all about. You can check its unit and its dimension on your screen, on the slide also. Okay. Now we'll come to the final point. What is our Gauss theorem? Gauss theorem says if you take a closed surface and place a charge Q inside that surface, possibly positive, then this positive charge will create its electric field, and the lines of forces of those field will come out of this surface. Then these lines of forces is passing through this imaginary surface in which the charge is being placed. So there will be a electric flux through this closed surface. Gauss theorem says that flux of this closed surface with a charge Q inside will be equal to the amount of charge upon epsilon naught. And net, don't forget to write this net in your board examination. Don't write total, you have to write it down. Either you write down Q net or you write down sigma Q, because there could be more, Q1 plus Q2, there could be many charges inside that surface. You will take the summation, total, net charge, no total, sorry, net charge in that surface. This is the Gauss theorem. That is the electric flux of a closed surface will be equal to the charge inside that surface divided by epsilon naught. Statement you can check it out on the slide. This part we will discuss in our next part of this video. Okay, till then, for the Gauss theorem we require area vector, we require solid angle, we require electric flux, that is phi E. Then this part, that is phi E is equals to q net upon epsilon naught. This part is called the Gauss theorem. We'll check the proof of this Gauss theorem in our next video. So thank you for this part. And one more thing, the PDF of this thing is attached in the description. You can check it out. Thank you, students.